What if I told you a man aged 140 had 6 sons, each becoming the ancestor of a nation, and hardly anyone knows their story? Sounds unreal, doesn't it? Biologically impossible, medically unbelievable. Yet it happened, and it's recorded in the Bible. There's a marriage tucked away in Genesis that goes against every natural rule. It happened when people thought the story had ended. A relationship that fulfilled one of God's boldest promises, involving a man older than most people's great-great-great-grandfathers. Abraham was 140. His body should have been frail, his strength long faded, and the idea of having children seemed out of the question. Sarah, his beloved wife, had passed away 3 years earlier. His home was full of grief. Isaac was starting his own life. Everyone believed Abraham's story was reaching its final page. Then Keturah appeared, a woman whose name means sweet-smelling incense, a scent rising to the skies. Through this surprising marriage, God did something so remarkable that its effects are still being uncovered today. 6 sons, 6 future nations, 6 forgotten peoples whose bloodlines continue to this day. And at the end of this video, I'll reveal something important. A detail about where these 6 nations are now and how they connect to what's happening in our world today. It will completely change how you see prophecy, the Middle East, and the way God works in history. So keep watching, because this story of a wedding at 140 years old that led to 6 nations is just beginning. To understand how this could happen, we need to return to one of the saddest days of Abraham's life, the day he laid Sarah to rest in the cave of Machpelah. Picture the moment. The cave entrance set into old stone, cool, quiet walls that had stood for generations. The scent of burial spices thick in the air, myrrh, frankincense, aloe, the soft light of oil lamps flickering shadows across the stone. Abraham, now 137, stood with shaking hands as he wrapped Sarah's body with cloth. She had been with him through it all, the woman who laughed when God made his promise, then cried tears of joy when Isaac arrived. She was his partner in every test, every blessing, every wonder. Now she was gone. The stillness inside that tomb must have been overwhelming, the grief so heavy it crushed the breath from his lungs. Tears streaked his aged cheeks, falling to the stone floor. He had been called the father of many nations, even God's friend, but in that moment, he was just a heartbroken man who had lost his soulmate. Genesis chapter 23 tells us how Abraham made a deal with the Hittites, paying 400 silver shekels for a burial place, a cave, and the land surrounding it. It describes how he laid Sarah to rest with great respect and care. Her death was final. It left a deep wound. The entire household mourned. Days passed into weeks, then into months, and finally into years. Abraham carried on leading his people. He kept honoring the God who had called him from Ur in the land of the Chaldeans so long ago. He watched Isaac grow into adulthood. He oversaw his livestock and his wealth. He went on with life, but something still felt incomplete. Then, 3 years after Sarah died, something completely unexpected took place. Genesis chapter 25 verse 1 mentions it with surprising brevity. Abraham married again, and his new wife was named Keturah. Just one short sentence. 11 simple words. But those words shift the story. The people in his home must have been stunned. Isaac probably had questions. The servants likely gossiped behind closed doors. Abraham was 140 years old. Who marries at that age? Who plans to begin a new family when others that old have long been buried? But what no one could see yet was this. This wasn't just an old man looking for someone to keep him company. It wasn't only about finding someone to eat meals with or talk to at night. This was the unfolding of a promise made nearly 65 years earlier. God had said Abraham would become the father of many nations, not just through Isaac, not just through Ishmael, but many. And Keturah, a woman with a name that means incense, was about to become the way that promise would grow. But who exactly was Keturah? The Bible tells us almost nothing. She shows up in Genesis 25 without any introduction, like a new actor stepping onto the stage. There's no family tree, no birthplace, no story of how she and Abraham met, or why she chose to marry a man so old. All we get is her name, Keturah, meaning fragrance or incense in Hebrew, and that detail might be the most important. In Scripture, incense isn't just for decoration. It has spiritual meaning. It rises to heaven as an offering. It's tied to worship, to sacred spaces like the tabernacle, to the prayers of believers, and to God's very presence. Keturah was named after something that rises to God. Her life, her union with Abraham, her children, and what came after would be like that incense. A sweet aroma lifted to heaven, a gift that brought joy to the Lord. Some experts think Keturah may have come from Ham's line, maybe even from the Canaanites. Some believe she might have come from a group Abraham met during his travels in the east. But honestly, we can't say for sure where she came from. Only God knew, and that was enough. Now here's a thought that might stay with you. What if the most important part of your life is the one you think could never happen? What if God is asking you to step into something that doesn't make sense to anyone else? Would you still say yes? Would you be bold enough to follow a path that looks strange to others, but is part of God's bigger plan? One thing we are certain of is this. When Abraham married Keturah, he was 140 years old. To help you understand, he was older than the age of most countries today, even older than the United States. By that point, his body should have given out. He shouldn't have had the strength. The idea of having more children should have been impossible by every logical measure. But God had already shown that what seems impossible to people means nothing to him. He had already renewed Abraham's body when he was 100 so he could father Isaac. He had already opened Sarah's womb when she was 90, even though she had never been able to have children. God is known for doing things exactly when they seem least likely. And at 140, he was inviting Abraham to believe again, for more descendants. What would you have done in his place? Would you have laughed the way Sarah once did? Would you have had doubts like Abraham did when God first told him he'd have children as countless as the stars? Would you say something like, God, I'm too old. That time of my life is over. I've already done what I was meant to do? Abraham could have refused. He could have looked back on his long life, satisfied with Isaac as his only heir, enjoying his last years in peace. But instead, Abraham agreed. He believed God still had more in store for him. He chose to trust that age and weakness don't stop God from bringing new life. He was willing to walk into a fresh season, even though he was grieving, even though his body was worn, even though others wouldn't understand. And Keturah, whose name means fragrance, she said yes too. She entered a covenant with a man over 100 years old, understanding that their union was about something greater than either of them alone. Have you ever been in a place where you felt God nudging you to hope again, just when you had accepted that it was over? Maybe you thought your time to make a difference was behind you. Maybe you believed you had already done all you could. Maybe you looked at your age, your situation, or what little you had, and said, God, it's too late. But the story of Keturah and Abraham breaks that lie. Because what came next proved that when God gives a promise, he doesn't just make it happen. He goes beyond anything we could imagine. The people in the household noticed. The workers murmured quietly. Isaac likely felt a mix of emotions. But Abraham and Keturah simply kept moving forward, living each day with steady faith in the God who made the impossible possible. And then impossibilities began to unfold. Keturah didn't just conceive once, she gave birth 6 times. Abraham, already far past 140, became the father of 6 sons with Keturah. Their names are found in Genesis 25:2, Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shuah. These 6 names are mostly unknown to many believers today, yet each son became the founder of a tribe. 6 nations rose from these boys and spread across ancient lands, shaping the future in ways few realize. But where did these sons go? What paths did they take? And why aren't they talked about more today? Before we go further, if this story is helping you see a part of Scripture you've never explored, if you're starting to recognize how God works through overlooked people and moments, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. What's coming next will show where these nations are today and how their legacy still matters in current events. Now we reach a turning point, the moment that determined the future for Keturah's sons. It was when Abraham sent them east. Genesis 25:6 includes one of the least noticed but most important verses in the Bible. It says Abraham gave gifts to the sons of his concubines and sent them away from Isaac toward the east while he was still alive. The term concubines is used here, even though verse 1 clearly refers to Keturah as Abraham's wife. Some believe this wording is related to inheritance rights. Isaac remained the chosen heir. But let's be clear, Keturah was Abraham's proper wife, not a lesser partner. Read the verse again carefully. Abraham sent her sons away from Canaan, from Isaac, from the land of promise. Was he rejecting them? No. This was part of a divine plan. Try to picture it, the early morning sun rising over a huge camp, tents stretching as far as the eye can see, flocks and herds being divided, camels being packed with riches, silver, gold, fine cloth, weapons, tools, and food for a long trip. Abraham, now nearing 170 years old and close to the end of his 175-year journey, stands before these 6 young men. The light of dawn touches his worn face. His hands that had built altars, held a blade over Isaac and buried Sarah, now rest gently on each son's shoulders. He feels their energy, their strength, their promise. His chest tightens with deep emotion. These sons were God's reminder that his life still had purpose. They were born in a time when no one thought it could happen. They were living signs of God's power and promise. Abraham speaks with a voice full of meaning, not because he's old, but because his words carry blessing and release. His eyes that had seen angels, watched fire fall on Sodom, and looked at Isaac on the altar, now look at each of his sons with unwavering love. Isaac will stay here. He is the child through whom the covenant continues. The Savior will come from his descendants. But for you 6, God has chosen another path. You'll head east. You'll become founders of nations. You will carry the name of Abraham far and wide. Through you, the promise that I would become the father of many peoples will be fulfilled. Then Abraham gives them gifts, valuable ones. This isn't a symbolic gesture or a goodbye with empty hands. These are meaningful offerings from a father who deeply loves his sons and wants to equip them for the journey and purpose ahead. With hugs and tears, Keturah's 6 sons turn toward the dawn and begin walking eastward. Imagine that moment, leaving behind everything familiar, leaving the father whose faith had shaped generations, who had lived for 175 years, and who had personally encountered God, leaving their brother Isaac and stepping into lands they had never seen, carrying only their father's blessing and God's promise that they would become nations. And here's what's truly astonishing. These 6 nations didn't vanish into history. Their descendants still live today in modern Arabian cities throughout the Middle East, carrying the physical and spiritual lineage of Abraham passed through Keturah. The news you hear about that region, the conflicts, the cultural movements, the international tensions, they involve Abraham's children, not just through Isaac and Ishmael, but through Keturah's sons as well. The promise that Abraham would father many nations isn't only a story from ancient scrolls. It's alive and unfolding even now, and Keturah played a central role in a part of that promise most people overlook. Her sons moved eastward, crossing wild lands, deserts, and territories that would eventually become Arabia, Mesopotamia, and other eastern lands. And there, they grew into strong nations. Take Midian, the 4th son. He became the ancestor of the Midianites, an influential people who controlled trade between Africa and Asia. They managed the movement of goods, spices, gold, and incense throughout ancient markets. But here's something many people don't realize. The Midianites were once friends to God's people. When Moses ran away after killing the Egyptian, where did he go? To Midian. And who welcomed him? Jethro, the priest of Midian, a direct descendant of Keturah through her son Midian, and who became Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, who gave Moses key advice on how to lead and manage the people of Israel. It was Jethro again, a descendant of Keturah. He helped shape the man who would lead Israel out of slavery. Let that sink in. Zimran, the oldest son, founded groups in the southern regions of Arabia. His children became early Arab communities, known for their deep understanding of the skies and their wisdom. Jokshan became the father of Sheba and Dedan. Yes, that's the same Sheba that would later be known for its famous queen, the one who traveled to challenge King Solomon with difficult questions. The Queen of Sheba, who arrived with treasures of gold, spices, and gems, is believed by many scholars to be a descendant of Jokshan and therefore of Keturah. Medan, Ishbak, and Shuar moved into the eastern territories. They built tribes recognized for their battle skills, trade networks, and ability to live in harsh desert environments. These weren't small or forgotten clans. They were powerful nations that helped shape ancient history. And every one of them came from Keturah, the woman who became Abraham's wife when he was 140 years old. But the story goes even deeper. These descendants show up throughout the Bible. They're not only found in the book of Genesis. They're present in the life of Moses. They appear during the time of the Judges. They are involved during the reign of King David. And they are mentioned by the prophets. God never overlooked Keturah's children. In Habakkuk 3:7, the prophet writes about the trembling tents of Cushan and Midian. In the book of Judges, the Midianites are central to Gideon's story. In Isaiah, we see references to eastern people bringing offerings and praise. Keturah's lineage wasn't a side note. They were part of the greater biblical narrative, participating in God's plan in ways that we're only beginning to grasp. And here's the part many don't realize. When God told Abraham he would be the father of many nations, he wasn't speaking only of Isaac and the Jewish people. He wasn't just referring to Ishmael and the Arab world. He was also pointing to Keturah. 6 additional nations, 6 more people groups, 6 more branches on Abraham's growing family tree, spreading out into the world. The promise was larger than anyone could have guessed. Keturah was not just Abraham's later-in-life wife. She represented something deeply important about God's nature. Just like Keturah brought new life to Abraham when it seemed his time for growth had passed, God brings unexpected fruitfulness into our lives too. His work doesn't end when others assume it will. After Sarah passed, most believed Abraham's journey was nearly done. They thought his days of influence were behind him. They looked at his age, his life, and decided his story was over. But God doesn't follow human logic or deadlines. God could have fulfilled his promise to make Abraham a father of many nations through Sarah alone, the wife chosen for the covenant, Isaac's mother, the woman tied to the original promise. That would have made perfect sense. But instead, he included Keturah, a woman mentioned briefly, whose name most people don't know, and who is given only a few words in the book of Genesis. Why? Because God doesn't define importance the way we do. He doesn't base his choices on popularity or recognition. He chooses people based on the purpose they carry. And Keturah's role was to show that God's plans are always larger than what we expect. He could have stopped at Isaac and Ishmael, 2 sons, 2 nations, and still made his point, but he didn't. He added 6 more sons, 6 more nations, because when God says many, he truly means more than we can imagine. We look at age and say, too late. God says, I'm just beginning. We look at our situation and think, this can't happen. God says, let me show you what's possible. We focus on loss, like the passing of Sarah and the sorrow Abraham carried, and believe the chapter has ended. But God says, I'm opening a new chapter you never saw coming. That's the kind of God we encounter through Jesus Christ. Just when we feel like we've run out of reasons to keep going, he reveals a fresh part of his plan. Keturah's story reminds us that God's promises are always greater than our understanding at the start. Abraham believed the promise pointed to Isaac, and it did, but it didn't end there. He thought Ishmael was part of the fulfillment, and he was, but there was more. The full picture was always wider. The plan always included more people. The expansion was always going to go further than the mind could grasp. And the same truth applies to the promises spoken over your life. You may only see one possible path for God to keep his word, but he has many ways you haven't even thought of yet. So what can we take away from the story of Keturah and Abraham? First, it's never too late for God to move. Abraham was 140. Keturah became the wife of a man many would have considered done with his calling, but together they gave rise to 6 nations. If you've been thinking it's too late for you, or that your moment has passed, this story proves otherwise. God often begins new work right when we assume it's over. Second, God's promises are always deeper and broader than we first believe. Abraham heard, "Father of many nations," and pictured Isaac, then maybe Ishmael. But God had Keturah's sons in the plan all along. So when he speaks to you, don't shrink the promise down to what you can understand. His plans unfold in layers, and some parts will only be revealed with time. Third, staying faithful even when no one sees still creates lasting impact. Keturah is introduced in just 11 words in Genesis, barely a mention. Yet her children shaped the story of Scripture for centuries. You may feel unseen. You may wonder if what you do matters. But God takes your quiet obedience and uses it to build something far beyond what you can see, something that will echo through generations. So the real question isn't, am I too old for God to use me? The question is, will I say yes to the new thing God is asking of me, even if it seems impossible? Will you trust that your life still holds purpose you haven't imagined yet? Keturah said yes at a moment that looked impossible, and through that yes, 6 nations came into being. What could come from your yes today? If this story has helped you see God in a new way, working beyond limits and expectations, there are 3 things I'd love you to do. First, leave a comment below that says, "It's never too late." Because maybe today is the day you finally believe that God still has amazing plans for you, no matter your age, your situation, or how closed the doors may seem. Second, subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week, we share stories of overlooked people in the Bible whose lives left lasting marks. These hidden accounts reveal God's faithfulness in ways that will change how you view your own story. They're not just interesting, they stir your heart to believe again. Third, share this video with someone who needs hope, someone who thinks they missed their chance, someone who has started to believe that getting older means they've run out of time. They need to know that God often saves His best work for what we think are the closing chapters. Because this isn't just a story from long ago, it's a declaration over your life right now. God hasn't stopped writing your story. Your time of growth isn't done. Abraham began as a man with no children, called to leave everything behind and follow a God he barely knew. Through Sarah, he became the father of Isaac, the son of promise, the ancestor of the Messiah. Through Hagar, he fathered Ishmael, who became a great leader and the father of 12 princes. And when it seemed like his story had ended, he had 6 more sons through Keturah, nations that would shape the world and appear again and again in biblical history. Here's what made the difference. Abraham never stopped saying yes, even at 140, even after losing Sarah, even when everything told him his time had passed. He kept believing, he kept trusting, he kept letting God do the impossible through him. That's the difference between finishing well and stopping too soon. Stopping too soon says, "I've done enough." Letting someone else finish your story is one thing, but finishing well means saying, "God, I'm still here. I'm ready for whatever comes next, even if it feels impossible." It's been thousands of years since Keturah became Abraham's wife and gave birth to 6 sons who would become 6 nations. Yet her story still speaks today. God's plans for your life are far greater than you realize. Just because you've reached a certain age doesn't mean your influence is over. Right now, God is asking you the same question He asked Abraham when he was 140. Do you still believe I can do something new? And the answer is up to you. Maybe you're 40 and wondering if your best days are behind you. Maybe you're 60 and feeling like your time has passed. Maybe you're 80 and thinking new beginnings are for someone else. But Abraham was 140 when God said, "We're not finished yet." Let that sink in. 140 years old, and God was just beginning a new chapter. So what's your reason for holding back? What excuse are you using? Your age, your situation, your regrets, the doors that seem closed. If God could do something that incredible with Abraham at 140, He can absolutely move through your life today, regardless of your stage in life. You can still say yes. You can still begin again. You can still create, launch, lead, build, nurture something that will leave a legacy beyond your lifetime. Don't let your story stop too soon just because the world tells you it should. God is still writing. And Keturah's life proves that some of the most powerful chapters start when you least expect them. Let the story of Abraham and Keturah remind you today that it's never too late for God to do something remarkable through someone fully surrendered to Him. May this be the encouragement your heart needs. May you remember that God writes stories with people who are willing to say yes, no matter their age, no matter how broken, no matter how unlikely. God bless you deeply. Until next time, in the next story.